So we have been in a series of messages about the end of time, book of Revelation, the King is coming. So we're taking a break today because today I want to talk, it's kind of a Mother's Day message, but it's a message to kind of all of us. Because in the Bible, one of the greatest things that you can do is be an intercessor in prayer for someone else. Because a lot of times what happens is those individuals sometimes can't pray for themselves. Maybe they're going through something very, very difficult, very, very hard. And so somebody want to get them and take them back to the back. Thanks. But anyway, so being an intercessor is probably one of the best things that you can actually do. And some of the best prayer warriors I know, we were all just getting comfortable, about ready to go sleep. This is Emily, bright lights. Do I have to get up now? But some of the best prayer people that I've seen are women. Some of the best prayer warriors that I've seen are mothers. And a lot of times I've been blessed with some of those that, because they'll always ask, can they pray for you? And they're always praying for their children. A lot of times you'll ask someone that's a mother, what can I pray for? And probably the very first thing that they say, they may be hurting, they may be in pain and everything, but the first thing they'll say is, can you pray for my children? This child is doing this or doing this or doing this, and this other one over here I'm really concerned with. They don't have a job, or they're going through some issues and troubles and things in life, and they really are concerned. And so a lot of times we begin to see mothers who actually stay on their knees until God answers, and they're in there. My mom, she worked third shift, and it seemed like almost every weekend she would get one weekend off, maybe a month or whatever. But most of the time it was always work third shift on Saturday night. She would get in about 7:30, 7:45. She would make sure that we would have breakfast. She would make sure that we were dressed up, ready to go to church, and she would go lay down for a little while. Then we would go to church, and church was more than just church to us. Church is where we developed friendships with a lot of people, the kids. We all went to different schools, but yet we got together on the weekends and saw each other that sometimes we didn't see during the week. And it didn't matter that my mom had worked all night and had only slept a few hours. If it was her turn for us, all of the kids we would alternate someone's house, and the mother would always cook for us, make sure we had something to eat, and then we'd go out and play, or go somewhere to do something. And she would always do that. And then later on, she would take a nap, right? Kind of a 3-4 hours of the other 4 hours that she needed to get her 8 before she would go back into work. And I remember that all the time. My dad didn't drive, and so my mom took us everywhere, unless she made us walk. And sometimes we had to do that. And some kids today have no clue. You mean I've got to walk that far? Yeah, like we had to walk to school most of the time. And most of the time to school, it wasn't 2 miles uphill both ways. Okay, that is not true. It was 5. We would walk with shoes that in the rain or the snow that sometimes would have holes in them, and you would have cardboard in the bottom of it because it wasn't your turn to get a new pair of shoes, and you'd wore them out. And so but she would always make sure that you had what it was that you needed. And my mom, like I said, is 91. There are days that she doesn't know who we are. A couple of weeks ago when I went to see her by myself, she thought I was a friend of hers and was married to somebody else. But I found out everything that my mom did when she was younger. That if my grandma had known, she would have, oh man. She was telling me about boys that she would sneak into her house and store them underneath the bed. And I thought, this is my mom. And now I know where I learned all this stuff. And she taught me. She didn't know it. But today I just want to focus on mothers. And I want to pick one story out of the Bible, out of Mark chapter 7, verses 24 through 30. About a mother who really learned how to pray. Jesus was talking, and he had been talking actually to the leaders, religious people, like always, and they didn't get it. And it always seemed like there was always a Gentile around there that was not part of the crowd. And so here was this lady, said he got up and he departed from there to the region of Tyre. He entered a house, and he did not want anyone to know it, but he could not escape notice. Instead, immediately after hearing about him, a woman whose little daughter had an unclean spirit came and fell at his feet. The woman was a Gentile, a Syrophoenician by birth, and she was asking him to cast the demon out of her daughter. He said to her, "Let the children be fed first, because it isn't right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs." But she replied to him, "Lord, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." Then he told her, "Because of this reply, you may go. The demon has left your daughter." When she went back to her home, she found her child lying on the bed, and the demon was gone. Now, a lot of times in the Bible, it'll talk about demon possession, and especially with children and other people. And sometimes you have to understand, in the day and the age that they were writing in, they didn't know a lot about medical terms, because there were certain medical conditions that people were born with that they considered to be demon possession. One of those was epilepsy. If a person or a child was born during biblical times, if you've ever seen someone who is having a seizure, it's not a pretty sight. A lot of times, we're not talking the rolling of the eyes back and the head turning and all that stuff. But a lot of times the eyes will roll. There will be a lot of jerking. They may fall. And even when they fall, the seizures will continue. And there will be flailing of the arms, the limbs. And then a lot of times when they come out of the seizures, they're not even aware of their surroundings. It's almost like a suspension in time, where they were going to do something right before this all came, and then for whatever period of time it progressed, and then recovery time, it was like, to them, it never occurred. They may go right back to whatever it was. I say that because I've experienced it with my daughter, with her seizures. She would be getting dressed for school. She would be sitting down and tying her shoes and have a seizure. And after she would come out of it, the next thing she would do would be reaching down to make sure that her shoes were tied. And so in the biblical time, this may have been what the daughter was possessed with. I don't know. I'm not going to argue with it because here it is, and this is what it said. Okay? But we need to understand that this young girl was so possessed with whatever it was that she had that she couldn't travel. Jesus had come into town and did not want anybody to know that he was there. And reasons for that. Because a lot of times, if you read in the Bible, as soon as they found out that Jesus was in town, people started bringing all their sick to him. Everyone. Houses were overflowing. People couldn't get in. They were outside waiting just for Jesus to touch one of them. So he was asking people, no, don't tell anybody that I'm here, that I'm in town, that I'm in this house. But word got out that Jesus was in town. Word got out where he was staying. And so this mother who had a daughter that she was concerned for couldn't travel with the mother. But the mother came to Jesus. And when you look at the very first thing that she did, the Bible says that she fell at his feet. She didn't stand up. She realized who he was. And she came and she fell at his feet. And she knew that this was the one that others had told and prophesied about him coming. She knew that this was the Messiah. She knew this was the one who could touch and heal when nobody else could. I'm sure she had taken her daughter to many doctors of that day and time, and nobody could do anything with her. She probably had taken her to the leaders in the church. They probably prayed over her. They probably anointed her. They probably did a lot of things, but they couldn't do anything. She still, as the Bible would say, demon-possessed. Again, whatever it was that was there, it didn't go away. But yet, one of the things that the Bible teaches us is Jesus isn't just a teacher. He isn't just the Son of God. He isn't just a Messiah. He's also a healer that can touch when we need that healing and that touch. He also, when we began to see, it was nature that he controlled also. Remember, he told the wind to stop. And it became the most peaceful spot on that sea. It would be like a clear reflection. No ripples, nothing. Just motionless, almost like suspended in time. And then we also found out that there were people that had died that Jesus brought back to life. Not just Lazarus, a king's daughter, others that he had touched and he brought back to life. But she fell at his feet and she began to passionately ask him for help. There's something about a mother's love for her children. Now, fathers, we love our kids. We really do. But there is something about a bond between a mother and a child that fathers can't replace. And that's okay, because I'm not here to replace it. God has reasons for the things that he does. There are things that we do as fathers that mothers can't do. And sometimes being a single parent, when you have to try to do both, is very difficult because we weren't built to be the father and the mother. We were built in a certain way with certain characteristics of nature that he has given us to be able to. Now, does that mean that a father can't love? No, that's not what I'm saying. We do love, just as God loves. But there's just something that's there. Now, I don't know about you, but maybe you're dealing with something. And it doesn't have to be demon possession, but there are times that we intercede for our loved ones and our kids. And mothers are good at this. You've got a child that is sick. Sometimes it's very hard. Because that child is really, really sick. And as a father, we think we can fix it. So we start trying everything in the world. Now we're blessed with Google. And ask Dr. Phil or ask Dr. Oz, or ask the doctor or go MD or whatever. And we can go there and look at all the things that's going on. And here's what we should try. And we try all these things and they don't work. But then all of a sudden, a mother takes that child and holds that child in their arms. And there's just something comforting about that voice. There's something comforting about those arms. There's something comforting when that child is just laying against the mother's chest. Some things that we look at and we think, well, why is it that you can do this and we can't? And she says, because you ain't me. You're you. We're built differently. We're made differently. We're wired differently in all of these things. But then there's also some other times, and fathers do the same thing. A lot of times, you find that when a child starts sprouting wings and starts leaving home, starts dating and going out, they have a curfew. And let's say the curfew is 11 o'clock. A lot of times the father is asleep, snoring in his recliner. And the child can come in and never wake them up. But that door opens, and it seems like that mother is wide awake. She hears the noise. She may poke you and say, "Did you hear that?" "That's nothing. Go back to sleep." "No, it's Johnny or Susie coming in. They're home safe now. We can go to bed and be okay." Knowing that the kids are safe in their house. Or maybe even later on, when that child gets older and they're out on their own, that mother is lying in bed alongside of you and she wants to talk about them, and you're saying, "Can't we do this in the morning when I'm more awake?" And no, we want to talk. I want to talk now. I'm concerned. Do you know that? Oh, they'll be okay. They're just growing up. And they're saying, yeah, but there's something that in a mother's spirit that just feels something. And that concern that's there. And we get this with this mother. And I don't know about you, but when I see this lady coming and following at Jesus' feet, she began to show us some things. Number one, she began to show us that he deserves our respect and reverence. It isn't just Jesus. He's there. She expresses her awe for him. She admits her helplessness, her grief. And she stopped trying to fix things. And there are times we can't fix things. We need to take it to God or take it to Jesus because he can. Now, this mother, as she began to bow, the second thing that she did, she cried out on behalf of another. A lot of times as fathers, we need to be careful because a lot of times what we're doing is we're praying for ourselves. A mother, a lot of times, puts everyone else up there. But her message isn't flowery. And she was desperate for her daughter. She was interceding for her daughter. And when you look at this, the writer tells us something about this woman. She's not Jewish. First, he tells us that she was a Gentile. And then he goes on and explains that she was a Syrophoenician by birth. Not just a Gentile, but a little bit lower, coming from a certain region. He's telling us that when you looked at all of the religious leaders and all of the Jewish people and all of the other things, here is this woman that's not just a Gentile, she's a Syrophoenician. But yet, she didn't care who this was. She didn't care that she was an outcast. The concern wasn't about how she looked. Her concern wasn't from what class of people she came from. Her concern was, my ego has gone out the window. Because it doesn't matter. I am concerned for my child. And a lot of times you begin to see that what a mother does when they become concerned for their children, it's like they stop everything. And they are focusing on that child, praying for that child. But what matters is this. She could have gone and done a lot of things, but what does she do? She comes to Jesus and she cries out to him. And there are times as a mother that maybe you've got in a situation right now that what you've been trying to fix, you've been trying to deal with, and you're at your ends with, you don't know what you're doing. I believe you need to take lessons from this mother. What you need to do is cry out to him in desperation and saying, here, I can't fix this. I don't know what to do, but you do. Can you touch my child? Can you do these things? When she cried out to him, there's some things that Jesus said to her. And look at what she said, or he said. Let the children be fed first because it isn't right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. And you look at that. This is not words of compassion. You're telling me to get away from me because why should I be throwing things to you, to the dogs? And a lot of times, what you begin to understand is that what he's saying here is when he's using this dog, he was talking about a pet, okay? When you say a pet, you got to understand something. There is a difference between a pet and a wild dog. And he's making a definition or a definitive point in here when he begins to start telling us, because he used the term for a small dog, a pet, not a wild dog, because a wild dog would be considered unclean. Like when Peter said, these Gentiles are pigs. Should I be feeding them? And he says, I don't make things unclean. And God begins to do this. And so what Jesus is trying to do to her is not something of getting rid of or whatever. What he's doing, she said, listen, Lord, even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. So she's understood what he's talking about when he said, even the dogs, should I feed them? What should I do? He says, let the children be first, because it isn't right to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs. So what are you asking for here? What are you looking for? She says, well, the dogs, they even they eat from the table underneath or from the children's crumbs. And I don't know about y'all, but one of the things that I don't like, my wife has got this dog named Bella. And this dog, whenever you eat, she should eat. Okay? So Diana will take something and go into the bedroom to eat it. And she'll be laying there. This dog will come up and lay right on her chest, mouth right here, her face right there, waiting for her to drop a crumb. And if she doesn't feed her, you know what she does? She comes and gets me to take her outside. It isn't really that she gets to go outside. It's because Diana has taught her, you go outside, you do your duty, and somebody will give you a treat. I have never seen a pet that can pee so much in my life. So even that dog eats from the crumbs. You open a can, that dog knows you're going to eat. I should get part of what you're eating. And I keep telling the dog, you ain't getting what I'm eating. I got your dog food. And the dog has determined that she doesn't like the dog food anymore. So I had to go buy special dog food for her. And now all she does is she eats, goes outside, and comes back in because she thinks I'll feed her again. But that's beside the point. But what Jesus was doing here was testing her faith. Are you just going to walk away? Are you just going to go on? You came asking for your children, and I'm telling you that okay, let the children be fed first, and then the dogs, they'll have the crumbs. Should I just throw it to them? And she says, listen, the dogs have already got their crumbs. They'll get it from the children. I'm not asking for crumbs for me. I'm asking for my daughter. I'm asking for her. And Jesus saw the faith that she had. And he turns around and he says, listen, because of this reply you may go, the demon has left your daughter. So what are we asking for? See, a lot of times what we're asking for is this huge miracle. We're asking for something phenomenal. And what Jesus is saying is this. What I should be praying for is even just the crumb off of God's table. Even the crumb. The littlest thing, God. Because, may I say this to you? What seems impossible to us is not impossible with God. And even the crumb off of God's table is enough to do what God needs to do. So, let me finish with this, and that is this. If you're going to pray and you're going to cling for hopes, you've got to learn how to do something, and that is this. You have got to learn how to trust a prayer-answering, miracle-working God. Because if you don't believe that he can perform miracles, then why are you praying? Because you're asking him to do something that you can't do. And so we need to understand these things. And may I say this to you, if you look at the story, in all of the other stories of where Jesus casted out demons, he spoke to the demons. This young girl was far away. Jesus did not say, demon, come out of her. All he said to this young lady, or to this mother, was this: go home. The demon has left your daughter. Trust me. He says, because of this reply that you may, he said, because of this reply, you may go. Why? Because I answered the prayer that you, or your request. There are some times you're not even aware of it, but God's already answered your requests through Jesus. And you got to learn how to trust him. This mother, we understand, is this: that in desperation, God still hears your cries. There are times that you may be praying at night. You think God doesn't hear me? Oh, yes, he does. You're crying out in desperation and you say, where are you? He says, I'm right here. I'm right here. I'm a prayer answering God. Now, the answers may not always be what you want them to be. But if you pray and in faith believing, you'll be okay. Because he'll do those. So this morning, I ask you this. Number one, do you believe in God? Have you put your faith in Jesus Christ? Have you trusted him as your Lord and Savior? If you have, my question to you is this: how often do you talk to him? Is it only when you need something? Or do you talk to him all the time? Sometimes in gratitude for what he's done. Other times just saying thanks. Really don't have anything special to talk about today except the most important thing. I just want to thank you for just getting me up, for allowing me this day. We were outside Friday night. We had our kids over and we were having dinner and we were going to grill out. And as soon as we started up the grill, it started raining. What are we going to do? So we all pack up everything and we put it underneath the deck and down on the patio down there, and we're doing this and I'm raining and everything. And my son Tim comes down and says, "Hey, Dad, look." He says, "There's a rainbow." And then all of a sudden you look, it wasn't one rainbow, it was a double rainbow. In the last couple of weeks, I have seen 2 rainbows from beginning to end. From the start of it to the end of it. And I'm still trying to figure out which end has the pot of gold. Because I haven't found it in either one. But may I tell you this, I found my pot of gold in the rainbow when God gave me a promise that he loves me. And that he